But just a reminder, we're going to mute all participants on this chat. So use the chat box, like I said, to answer asked questions. We do not anticipate the board giving CE credit for these sessions, so we, again, won't provide attendance verification for CE credits. We are not speaking on behalf of board members. We're just giving giving this as an opportunity for you all to ask any questions, or if you want more information about something, we're available here to try to answer those. None of this should be construed as legal advice. We are not attorneys, and we don't pretend to be either. Turning on that, let's see, a few people or someone might be answering or asking a question. I did want to point out one thing for you regarding disciplinary actions that the board takes against licensees. We are allowed to publish those, and when the board does take action against someone, we can put those on our website. We publish them in our newsletter as well. Those orders are all public records and not subject to withholding. So if you're curious about disciplinary actions, those are posted on the website. This is kind of newsworthy because the Supreme Court just recently released an opinion on a contested case in front of the board that had to do with the licensee whose license was revoked based on a couple things. It's a pretty interesting order. Essentially, the Nebraska Supreme Court affirmed the board's decision to revoke the license of a certain individual who is licensed both as an architect and a PE. And so we don't publish that Supreme Court opinion directly, but the order related to that is posted on our website. And one thing I wanted to bring up is one of the aspects of this case was that this had to do with continuing education and a continuing education audit. And part of this licensee's argument to the Supreme Court was that his position, or at least as communicated through his attorney, was that continuing education is not critical to a licensee and their kind of not mission, but their commitment to protect health, safety, and welfare. And the Supreme Court, in their opinion, said that is absolutely not the case. Continuing education is very important. It does play a role in protecting health, safety, and welfare of the public. And so the board was right to, or at least justified in the Supreme Court's view, to revoke this individual licensee's license. So just a reminder there. Again, that was a newsworthy item. We put that in our newsletter as well. So just underscoring the importance of continuing education as it relates to you all in your practice. The Supreme Court has just underlined that, yes, that is very important. And that's why the board does what it does. Audits continuing education for licensees during every renewal, and does take those, if someone is not meeting their continuing education obligations, the board definitely takes that seriously and will take action if it sees the need to do so. So that was an interesting, the end of a long process. I see a licensee is typing, possibly a question. Anyone else has anything they want to know about? What other newsworthy items are? Also wanted to briefly go over recent changes to the E&A Act. These were effective in July, if you're not aware. Just a reminder again, you now can put your signature next adjacent to the seal. It doesn't always have to be across the seal. It does have to be legible in both cases, so licensees now have the ability to do either or, whatever works out for them best. The other big change for the E&A Act, this happened last month, Those applicants who are wishing to take the PE exam no longer have to apply to the board to be eligible for it. They can simply go to NCAAS and register for that test. And so now, the first time we will see engineers, at least from a board perspective, is when one of two things occurs, is when they apply for their engineer intern enrollment, if they would like to, or if they are ready to get their license. And of course, we will look at their license to see if it meets the current 3 E's, the accredited degree. Have they passed both FE and PE exams, and do they have 4 years or equivalent of experience? Those are the main things. So again, we're just kind of simplifying the licensure process. They still have to meet our license requirements, which did not change at all. We're simply reducing kind of some of the red tape. That's how the board looked at it. So, okay, we did have a question from Larry. Work in a large organization where I am a director. My intentions are to retire in a few years. So this is likely about, emeritus. If I change to emeritus status prior to retirement, can I still lead a group of non-engineers for an engineering function? There are no others in the organization that can provide technical coverage of the department. That is an interesting question. I guess, is leading a group of non-engineers for an engineering function, I guess I don't quite know what that means in the context of if there's anything that, well, one thing I can think of, this organization, if you're the engineer in responsible charge of that organization, like let's say your organization has a certificate of authorization. If you're the engineer in responsible charge and you go to emeritus, that organization has to designate a new actively licensed professional engineer in responsible charge for that organization. So that's one aspect of something you and your organization need to think about. Now, as far as your next part of your question, can you lead a group of non-engineers for an engineering function? I would say I don't quite know what that means. Is leading a group of non-engineers for an engineering function, I mean, are you or is that organization practicing engineering as defined by the E&A Act? If so, then that work likely has to be performed by a actively licensed professional engineer. Emeritus licensees are not authorized to practice. So there are a couple things to think about before, as far as emeritus, as far as our board is concerned, as it relates to retirement in your organizations, they're really two different things. So I'm just trying to address the emeritus part. There may be some, if there are no others in your organization that can provide technical coverage, again, I'm not sure if what your organization is doing is, are you practicing engineering for the public? Like, are you a consulting engineer, or are you a factory that just provides products like widgets or something like that? There's different aspects of the act as it applies to both those organizations. Consulting engineer, you definitely better have a PE there to provide service to the public. If you're kind of a factory, that's a whole nother ball of wax. And so, Larry, you might call me directly and ask about that. But yeah, that emeritus change, particularly when you're the only one there at a company, you really have to think about, and there's more to think about on the company side rather than the personal side of moving to emeritus. At least that's how I see it. So, yeah, great question, Larry. Any other questions? Amy, Allison, is there any topic that you'd like to hit on while we're waiting for questions? I think I covered kind of the one newsworthy item and the recent changes. Those are the big things that that recently happened.
I did add
anything else?
I did add a
Go ahead.
slide under board resources about the upcoming webinar.
Mm-hmm.
I think it might be a couple down from that one.
Okay. And these webinars that we do are the monthly ones. So this is kind of a new thing we're starting up to find
Yes.
out. And so
So
you're talking about the Lunch and Learn
yes.
webinar series. Yeah.
Yes. So we're talking. So if you go down one more, just one more. Yep. So I included some information on our upcoming the Lunch and Learn webinar that we do quarterly. We have one scheduled for September 21st at noon. This one, as we've discussed before, these webinars are always going to kind of be geared towards different sorts of audiences. This one is more geared towards those building officials, local jurisdictions, community members, and just providing them those the information about when we need those Nebraska licensed architects and or professional engineer. Licensees are definitely more than welcome to attend. I sent this out on MailChimp to both licensees and these building officials and jurisdictions. So said we'll go over those requirements. If you have questions, who to go to, and just kind of maybe how to better assist community members, because we know that a lot of the times those community members will go into those clerk's offices or building inspectors and ask about they'll go in for building permits, zoning permits, things of that nature, and they'll have questions. So it's not their responsibility to enforce the act. That is ours, but being able to maybe provide some guidance on that, have some materials, or point them in our direction for further assistance as well. So just kind of giving them the lowdown of it, and also being a resource for those jurisdictions too.
Okay. Yeah. So if you know of a building official who might benefit from this, or an owner who might be, why do I need an architect or an engineer on my project? You could point them our way and say, well, there's a webinar that the board is doing to discuss why state law requires that we might have to be involved on some of these projects. So yeah, definitely tune in for that one in September.
Yeah. I'm sure if you've gotten the information on these monthly webinars, I'm sure you got the one about the quarterly webinars. So feel free to forward that on to anyone as well. Said it's on our I posted it on Facebook, it's on our website in several different places. So, and again, you can email mbea.marketing@nebraska.gov, and if you ever have any questions. So I see Ron has a question about webinars covering ethics. We do have a professional practice and ethics webinar. We do one usually about every 2 years. And I believe we did one, I believe it was at the beginning of this year. We try and just hit those once every 2 years for the biennial requirements.
Right.
So
yeah, I think that was our cadence, to try to do one every 2 years. That way it overlapped on everyone's CE period.
Yeah. So we did do one March 9th of this year, and that is on our YouTube channel as well. And I have the PowerPoint slides there as well on our website under resources and under that MBEA Lunch and Learn webinar series tab.
Okay, Ethan asks, what do you do in regards to working with local jurisdictions and let building officials know about complaints or issues? Well, we do have a goal of trying to visit every building department, local jurisdictions at the second-class city or above level every 3 years. We've been doing a fairly good job with that recently. Now, with some, we've got some challenges in the future potentially, because the state budget is tight, and although we don't use any general funds and we typically come out, we don't spend as much as we bring in, we're still affected by that, and we've still been requested to reduce expenditures up to 5%. And we're, of course, going to try to do that. But we're looking at areas where we, should we be reducing visits to local jurisdictions? And our initial reaction is no, because what we're trying to do is increase compliance and increase awareness of the board, right? That's really what these building department visits are for. So local jurisdictions can be informed that the board exists, and try to engage their help on sending information to the constituents in their communities that, hey, the board exists. You might know about the fire marshal already, to submit plans to them. Don't forget about this requirement that the Board of Engineers and Architects has. And it's been an uphill battle, just because we're not a huge agency. We don't have the resources. So we're just trying to be as efficient as possible. So those have been going great. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that the board has no power over local jurisdictions, right? We can't tell a building department, you can't approve this building project because of let's say it's a 3,000 square foot assembly occupancy project, which typically would require architects and engineers, right? Because it's over the exemption matrix limits. We have no power over them to say you can't accept those plans. Now, the building officials could institute, or those local jurisdictions could institute, some ordinances or other rules in their jurisdiction to kind of mirror the E&A Act. They can even be more restrictive than the Act. For example, they could say that any project over 4 stories, we want the structural engineering done by a licensed professional structural engineer. They could do that if they wanted to, and that would be more strict than the E&A Act would require. But again, we're looking to them for help, to try to get information out to the building owners in their jurisdictions, because the building owners themselves are ultimately the ones on the hook if they don't engage licensees if required by state law. So again, that's our goal, is to visit every second-class city or above, and the counties as well. We've been visiting the counties too every 3 years. And so we're going to continue to try to do that.
And then to piggyback off that, I think that will answer your next question. If our board does get a compliance case for a building project within a jurisdiction that has building officials, we do CC or send a copy of the letter, the complaint letter, to that local building official as well. So they're aware that there is a complaint filed within that jurisdiction and that the board is working with that property owner. So we do typically send those unless there's a reason that the board doesn't send them, but general practices, we send them as well. So that's something newer that has happened within the last 6 months to a year. So if there has been a complaint within your jurisdiction or within the jurisdiction, we do send that letter, a copy of the letter too.
Yeah, usually the building officials in those local jurisdictions don't like to be surprised. It's like, I didn't know the board was involved in getting this project remediated, and so just as a courtesy, the board likes to keep them informed. Okay, any other questions can help with, or anything else Amy or Allison want to cover?
You covered my topics, so that's all.
Good. Good deal.
That's all I had.
Okay. Well, okay. Do you have anybody giving input from the building departments? Well, I'm not sure what you mean by input. We do listen to them, and the board, takes their opinion or input. I'm not really sure what input you're describing as it relates to the act. I mean, the board can't do anything outside of the auspices of the act, what it allows them to do. So
I will say, since we've increased the visits to the local jurisdictions, those second-class cities, villages, and such. That has increased communication between building officials in our office, and has increased that education. So we do have a lot more contact with them. They feel more comfortable, I think, reaching out. So I do get frequent phone calls. But again, yeah, as far as John said, the input, I'm not sure what you're referring to there, but we do have a lot more communication now with them. It seems to be.
Yeah. I guess, and one way you could look at, or I think some building officials look at it is, it's like, well, the E&A Act says you can't do it, so I'm not going to allow it either in my jurisdiction, just to be safe. And there are those jurisdictions that I've come across. It's like, well, I don't care what the board or the E&A Act says. I'm going to do what I want in my town. It's like, all right, may not work out well for you. Do local building departments get a voice to the board up front for changes or after the fact? I guess I'll talk about that as it relates to rulemaking or statutory change. When the board makes or promulgates rules, those go through a public comment process, and there's a public hearing held on those rules. And so there's an opportunity for anyone to weigh in on the impact of a rule change or a new rule addition. So there is that opportunity. If a bill is introduced in the legislature to change the E&A Regulation Act, every bill that goes into the legislature also has a public hearing. So there is opportunities for local jurisdictions to not only directly comment. I would also mention that we do send notices of rulemaking changes to the League of Municipalities and NACO, Nebraska Association of County Officials. So through those two organizations, which are kind of representing municipalities and local jurisdictions in Nebraska, there's a couple opportunities for local jurisdictions to have a say or to provide input during either the rule promulgation process or the statutory change process. So just wanted to throw that out there. I think the league and both the league and NACO do a pretty good job. The league in particular, I think, staying abreast of bills that are introduced that could potentially impact local jurisdictions. So I'm definitely an advocate for the league and NACO. I think they do a really good job in advocating for local jurisdictions. So. Okay, any other questions? Yeah, I appreciate that, Ian. Dean, we cannot use this Q&A session for CEU. These are just kind of a free form Q&A. We do still have the monthlies or the quarterly webinars for CE, but these are not designed for CE to satisfy any CE requirements. These are merely like a Q&A wrap session with you all to ask and answer any questions that you have. So no, unfortunately, no, Dean. Sorry about that. Okay, any other questions? Sounds like we answered quite a few this month. So barring no others, I want to thank everyone for spending a few minutes with us and hopping on with us. Happy to do these. And again, these are kind of a relatively new thing, but just a good chance to reconnect with the board. And if you have anything on your mind, to let us know, and hopefully we can help with those. Okay.
Next month will be on Thursday, September 10th. So hopefully we'll see you guys then. Spread the word and think of some questions then. Or you can ask us before then. Shoot us an email then. But otherwise, we'll hopefully see you guys then. Thanks for coming.
Okay. Very good. Thanks all for coming. Bye.
Bye.